Hello explorers and welcome to another video. Today we are going back to the early beginnings of this channel. I think it was around the 10th or 9th video that I did where I did a little bit of a series and I was creating something that was really basic, how to write Java code by example. So Java by example. And in this series, I created an invoice PDF from some raw data. I used some JSON data and I created an invoice. And I have got a question for this really old video. This is back in 2016. And this video question was, can you help us do this but with an XSL, so with an Excel doc, read that data in and use that in the PDF creation. What I wanted to do was create an Excel sheet, and I've done that with some data. And the data is in a couple of columns and some different sheets as well. So we can look into that first. Let's jump over here. So first off, we have some invoice information. This is invoice date, invoice number, same as billing, if their shipping address should be the same as the bill address, some notes, some shipping number, and so on. And then we have the bill to, which I will handle as well. So this is the billing address and shipping address with a couple of fields here. And then we have some row data, and this is the data of the actual invoice, so the different rows in the invoice. And I'm gonna go through and make something here. I'm gonna create the actual code to read this in and use it. So if we switch over to the code editor here, you see that I have a little bit of a code in the beginning here that actually does the reading. But beforehand, I have this JSON document. I read in a few. And we can look at a few that's very short here. We have the same kind of information. We had some bill to, we had some ship to information, shipping data, notes, and the invoice rows. So it's very similar to what we are doing now, but we are doing it with an Excel sheet instead. So let's switch over here. And the first piece of code here is actually to parse the XSL. And if we switch over to here, these are the lines that you need in order to read an Excel sheet. And I'm using Tikka by the Apache Foundation. So I needed to add Tikka here, the Tikka parsers and the Tikka core. So those two dependencies I needed to add to my POM file here. And if we switch back to the code here again, I read a file, I create some basic content handle factory for I will handle it as an XML document, and I read it in. I do some auto detect parser that will detect data in here, and I have a content handler, I have metadata, and I have parse content. So I create a lot of different context and things up here. To the context, I put in the parser, and I create an input stream, and then I give the parser all these different things that it can use while it's parsing this document, and then the handler will have a string that we can fetch from it, and this will give us a string data of HTML. So if we go back to the code here again, we got this XSL HTML document, and I use JSoup to parse this document. And we can actually start by looking into the document here. So we do an XSL HTML and print that out. If we do that, we can see how this HTML document is structured, and we can go from there. So let's see here, and it takes a while for the code to compile here, and when it runs we will have some document here. So if we look at this, we see that we have some HTML header here that we don't really care about. And then we have in the body divs which has tables with the data. So we have one div here with the invoice header. We have another div with the bill to address, and the last div with the row data. So let's do those. Divs, handle those. So with this parser here, the JSoup, I can parse the document and then get elements by tag and get all divs, and I can print those out. So that's the next step that I want to do in order to handle this little document here. Let's see if we can get that. And then I will get each div in turn and I will print those out. And I will do as I did before with the invoice. I created something that took an invoice and then printed the document using the invoice data. So I want to handle this the same way and use the different classes that I have. So I want to take this invoice data and give it a document. So that's what I want to implement now. So let's go into the invoice data here. And let's see. No, that's not what I wanted to do here. So let's go back. So here I want to create a constructor, a new constructor that takes a document. So that's what I want to do. So let's create this again. Create constructor, doc get, elements by tag. Let's do div again. And element divs. So this is the divs that I have here. Like that. And now I want to do the same thing that this does up here, but I want it to handle the different things. So I will create an address and header. So let's see again what we had, what kind of divs that we had. For element e and divs. And print that out. So let's see here. We want the invoice header. We want the bill to. And I guess that we already have those, right? So we have the invoice header, which contains a lot of information here. So when we have this one, get elements by tag, h1, and then get the first indexed there and print that out. So let's see here. And then we get those headers here. And if the first div header here, if this is equal to invoice header, I will take this header and create a new header with that element. So that's what I want to do there. Then I want to do the same with bill to and row data. And in the bill to, I want to create an address, and the row data We also need to handle a case here. This ship to is equal to this build to. So there we need to figure out how to handle that. And I also think that this ship data, I think that is in the header here as well. Like that. Let's see here. Ship data has its own little thing. And down here we want the rows. How did I handle rows here? Rows are invoice rows. So that's handled like that. I did some handling here. So that's something that I need to do later on, because I don't really have that at the moment. And we also need to handle notes. And I don't really remember where the notes are placed. Is that in the header as well? Yeah, so I have the notes in the header as well. So I have a lot of information in the header. And we also have the bill to there, same as billing. So there is a lot in the header that we need to handle. This notes is a string. So let's just give it an empty string at the moment, and then we will handle that later. So now we need to figure out how to, we need to create constructors for these as well. So here I want to read all the rows and handle them together with the data in order to create some kind of a input like that. So let's see if we can figure that one out. We want to have some header information. We want to put that into as a header. So here I get all the element tags by ID and then do tr. And here we only have the invoice date and the invoice number. So we can have something that takes input inside of this and creates JSON from it instead. That could be a simplified case for us, perhaps, because we already have handling of JSON. So let's create a private JSON object from element to JSON and then element here. And then we create a new JSON object, data, new JSON object, and return that data. And we now know that the first row in this case, if we do get elements by tag, tr, so the first row is the names. So element table rows. We know that the first row here should be all the headers. And the second row should be all the data. Like that. Get elements by tag, tr, td. These elements are the headings. Let's see how many there are. Size, perhaps? Or int I equals to 0, less than size. Let's add to that. And let's see here what we can do. Headings, get I, and then we need to have the data as well. Datas. And here we want to take the data and oh, it's because these JSON object, we need to give them different names. JSON object, put heading and datas. And get the same there. Let's see what that gives us. If we have it here, get element JSON, JSON object, header. And then take this header and print that out. What does that give us? Fatal error or actual header information? Let's see here, we have some issues there. Let's comment that out at the moment, see if we can, and we need to comment that out as well. Let's see, here we go. And we get a lot of data and then a null pointer exception. So that didn't give us anything. Are we still printing the XML, XSL here? We do. So let's do some checks here. See what happens. We end up there. So we didn't. Let's see here. Add a variable. That's an element. Of course it is. Text. There we have it. We need to get the text, of course, of that in order to get the actual data. And I'm pretty sure we need to do the same here. So let's see if we can get something different here. That we actually get a header in some JSON format. Yeah. So we have some JSON format here. And then we should be able to create both the header and the shipping data from this format, right? Yeah. And we should be able to take this and get the key notes here as well. Yeah, and then create a string from that, like that. And up here we can take the bill2 and call it an address. Put that in there. Should solve that problem. And I think that we need to have a boolean here, same as bill, false. So we can set this here equal to header, get the same as bill. What's that the name? Same as billing. Equals to true. And if that's true, we should do that. And we can do that after this loop. We don't need to do that in the loop. What happens if we run that? Do we still have a null pointer exception somewhere? Or do we get a document? We don't have a null pointer exception anymore, which is a bit interesting. And so let's look here. This is the actual output that we get. We have some nulls here, which I didn't really expect. But we have created a document from whatever we had before, and most of the data actually sent through. So what is in the address that we get as nulls? It's the full name, right? So we don't handle the name correctly, and that's because the name is within another context here. So we have the name that is in a name object. So if we go back here and look at the bill2, I have put the title first and last inside of the same row. So I need to create a name object and put those in there, just to have it the same as here. So let's go back to the invoice again. And then I can take this address that I get here and create another JSON object that I can call name, new JSON object. And then we take the address, get title, and we take name, put title inside of it. We do the same for first and last. Quick and dirty. And then we take address and put name, this name variable here. To do that, we should have fixed the address part, taking something from an Excel document, reading it in, and changing the information over in order to handle our invoice format. So now we have the ship to and bill to address correctly in this document. The last part is to handle the row data. And this is a little bit more tricky because now we need to handle the option where we have multiple rows with the same data. So let's do this and get elements to JSON multiple, because we know that we need that. And in that case, we need to have a JSON array that will handle new JSON array. And that will be what we want to return here. So we take the table rows, that is the first part, and we have the header. And then we need to have the table rows size. We need to do a for loop, int I 1 to I of this size, and we continue to iterate here. We create a new JSON object. We will have this headings thing here that will take this first here. But we also need to have the actual row of the data here. So we put that in. We will change these over. I wonder which. I think it's easier to change the outermost one because that's fewer. Like that. So now we will read the headings every time. Don't need to do that. The headings can be read outside. So we'll read the table data rows. Do this a little bit simpler. So we have all the datas here. We will go through those. We will go through the headings, and we will create JSON objects. And these JSON objects we will put into our JSON array and the JSON object. If we do that, we can then down here take this element here and put that into this. And this should be some array data rows, like that. And this rows is equal to add invoice row, new invoice row. So let's do a for loop here. There's an object from the data rows. And put those in there. Which means that we can simplify this a bit. We create a list instead of JSON object, rows, new array list, and we will return that. Because then we don't need to handle that the JSON array contains only objects and need to cast a lot of things. So if we do like that, we can have a list with a defined object inside of it, return that, loop over the defined object down here, list JSON object, and then create new invoice rows from that. Let's see if this works. Perhaps we have created something that can read an XML document and create an invoice with that data. So let's switch over here and reload. And we have this, and it also handles the subtotals and so on. So that's how you can take something in an Excel document and reuse the old code you had in order to get some data from the Excel document into an PDF. Now, this is a series that I did a long time ago, so this code is not perfect. And what we wrote today was just a proof of concept. You need to do a lot of work in order to make this a product that you can actually use. But still, we have looked into how to do this. How can we make this, and how can this be done within the same framework pretty easily. I will commit this into the GitHub repository. So if you want to look at this and want to do your own thing that reads Excel documents and perhaps put in some extra error checking and make this more of a product that you can use in your day-to-day work, that's fine by me. This is a way for me to show how these things can be built in order to streamline any process flow or in order for you to learn more about Java. I hope you found this interesting. I hope that you like this video. Give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you have built similar systems or things in your day-to-day work, leave a comment down below and say what you have created that simplifies your workflow. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. And I really hope to see you in the next video.